Well, welcome over from my side. Glad to be here in person. You can feel the vibe. You also have some technical challenges in real time. So back to the good old, stage life. I have the honor today to talk about platforms, meaning marketplaces. I call it like platform extreme. Because like what we visited the last 2 years was an acceleration in many ways of the way that e-commerce is moving and progressing, and it was just really like time wrapped. And so like one of the interesting pieces I found to talk about is specifically looking at consumer shopping behavior, because many of you guys are obviously very close to the industry. So let's look at this jointly together. And what we're going to talk about today is on one hand to see kind of compare pre and post pandemic. Basically, it's over. In Germany, not so much. Other places in the US, it's totally over. We can talk about post now. We also talk about how marketplace businesses, as a business model, did evolve during that time, which is very fascinating. We also talk about like how marketplace businesses did perform, and how does everybody else look at those types of businesses. We're also going to talk about like what really makes the beauty of a marketplace, meaning the supply side, the seller side, and how going forward we as sellers or suppliers can sustain in this new environment. We also look at like what is coming up for marketplaces, like how are marketplaces evolving, how they're verticalizing, right? And I'll give you some examples also from a company that's very close to me, HomeTiger. It's like, how are we moving forward? What are we doing on the product side to make sure that consumers really get their purchase experience that they were looking for? And finally, I'll leave you with some key takeaways. So at that point, please wake up. Thanks so much. Let's go right in. Like a few words on myself. Miro, I'm founder of a company called HomeTiger. It's a HomeTiger Group. We operate brands such as Möbel24 in Germany, which is a more well-known brand, or HomeTiger in France, Italy, and so on. I'm a marketplace enthusiast. I started or scaled 4 marketplaces. One was in vacation rentals and travel. One was in advertising. One was in consulting, counseling, and lastly in e-commerce, furniture, home, and garden. So it's a little bit close to my heart, and I love to talk about it. Okay, hope you can see this. Let me kick you guys off with a very simple question. And the question is, what was the highest selling consumable product category in April 2020? That's now 2 years ago. Think about it. You have an idea? Disinfect, gloves, masks, or toilet paper? Got it? Keep that thought. Going to come right back to this. All right, now, here's the news. In 2020, Amazon lost market share in non-essentials. And here's the reason why. First of all, Amazon, more than anybody in the industry, has a superb data network. Like they really understand what's happening on the consumer side. They're touching the consumer in any way and have ways to analyze each category, each purchase frequency behavior. This is a very data-driven company. So that didn't happen entirely out of control. That was, in the end, planned, right? How did Amazon react? You guys must have felt this also partially. Amazon, first and foremost, they focus all their capacity or the warehouse capacity on essential wares. Yes, there were some regulatory-driven issues at the time, like who would be allowed to stay open or not. But also, Amazon went further. I went like, okay, let's set up specific stockage rules and new pricing schemes so you can't block the warehouse for anything that we don't find is adding to the user experience. Blocking capacity, but also expanding wildly. Remember, like all of a sudden, Amazon was not only one of the biggest employers on the ground for blue-collar work, but it was also like, buying up real estate space left and right and like trying to build up those warehouses in unseen time frames. And also, lastly, they stopped marketing to a large extent, right? So that all came together. And why did they do it like that? Well, because in the end, it was a perfect match with their main strategic goal, which is to serve customers in a much higher frequent market. So, and ultimately earns gigantic market share in essentials. Part of that being Amazon Fresh and such. That's why they lost a little bit on the non-essential side, and some of the other marketplaces and players picked up. Remember the thought I told you? All right, here we go. More toilet paper sold than shoes. You know what. Marketplaces had a massive influx of new customers. There was a lot of players in the industry, but specifically marketplaces. And now let's look into this deeper, like why did that happen? Well, it happened because on one side of necessity, but on the other side it was also driven by changing customer preference. And the preference moved away from, this is a price advantage, I really get some value, commercial value out of this. It moved much more to the convenience side. Convenience over value, speed, super choice. Yeah? And this is where the marketplace really has, this is the core asset of a marketplace, the aggregation, right? It's like bringing together tens of thousands or millions of sellers, right? And this comes in specifically handy when there's an overall supply shortage. So when you're an e-commerce player and you have like whatever, 20,000 SKUs, 300 top sellers, what are the odds that those 300 top sellers are sold out? Extremely high. What are the odds that everything else is still sitting on the warehouse? Extremely high. What is it for a marketplace? Well, somebody stops selling, somebody else picks up, right? So that fragmented supply side is a huge benefit once you aggregate it under one roof. Now, the other thing what also happened is interesting, and you see this time compressed, consumer brand loyalty was also dropping. Why? Well, look at that. Convenience over value, right? So once you are actually looking at, you're looking for a place to go that assures you a unified customer promise and a unified experience, that's it. I don't have to worry about which brand ultimately I'm buying. And this even more so in non-essentials. Price points a little bit lower. Who really needs to save on the last euro or dollar, right? So, this is really specifically non-essentials. People go to marketplaces now, first choice, because it's all about speed and convenience, right? And so the key thing that marketplaces need to achieve in a consumer mindset to become a reliable source with stable prices, no surprises, right? In a negative sense, and build more trust, right? And now we're going to look into how is it happening, and what does it mean for the seller side, right? By the way, I found this little chart there. You can go look at Google Trends. This was really fascinating. It obviously didn't last long, but it was quite fascinating to see people pile up on it. So think about what I just said. The model has changed. Now let's, whether it was April 2020 or was mid of 2019, but when you look back a little bit, feels like ages now, but marketplaces, and specifically look at Amazon, they became a go-to destination for specialty items, right? You weren't really sure, you're, DIY or something, you don't know where to find this. All right, let me go to Amazon, right? And certain types of commodities where we really don't worry about, when is it arriving, how good is the quality and everything, yeah? It was also predominantly useful in niches, right? So online specialists, power seller, they really drove it. And very, very strongly, and Amazon was at the forefront of this, it was about price. Remember this, Amazon wanted to make sure, hey, we compete against Walmart, we need to have the best prices. Yeah? And they squeezed the heck out of the supplier side, right? So price was a primary focus area. And on the consumer side also, look at back in the days, all right, you look for something, you didn't know where to go to, you didn't have a brand on your mindset, you would actually go to Google first. Well, look at this, do a category research and such. Yeah, Amazon was a little bit like a secondary source. I'm really not so sure, didn't really find on shopping what I like. Let's go to Amazon. And now, also look at the business model on the Amazon side. They were quite asset heavy. That means they really invested a lot in their own assortment, their own inventory. Right? Think about they even tried very heavy on private labels. They started their own fashion lines, they started their own furniture lines, all that. Yeah. Now that was before. And when you look at where's everybody today, and I'm picking on Amazon because you guys all know who's behind that, right? Amazon e-commerce starts at the marketplace. It just starts there. There's no way around it. And that means marketplaces are pretty much becoming the entire market. That means if you're not sitting on the marketplace, you're fighting your own single battle on the side, that's going to be tough. That's going to be very tough, right? And compare this a little bit, on the content side, yeah, in the 2000s and such, for Google. Initially, you could have said, okay, there's so many news portals, so many search engines and everything. Now people are still contesting in the European Union, like, well, is Google really dominating the market in one way or the other? They don't have to dominate the market; they are the market. So guess what's happening on the e-commerce side, right? Now, during the pandemic, that was the final call. That was like dark red call for everybody still on the offline side. We have to move online. And so there was a huge new supply source for shops, merchants. Well, obviously their bread and butter, there was that boutique store, beautiful store, but obviously that wasn't the future. So there was heavy investment on the online side, right? Going to marketplaces. Why? Well, because marketplaces do the selling. I can still do my sourcing side, the category management side and everything. They do the selling. Yeah, I do what I'm good at. So that really helped, right? And it also helped the marketplaces to build much broader catalog, right? And in that happening, now you have marketplaces also changed because not everything is easily sold on a generic marketplace. And typically, the more complex a product, the more feature it has, the more descriptionary items it has, the more it needs its own frame. And that's where generic marketplaces they suffer. They don't get this right. Yeah. If you want to buy a car on Amazon, it will be hard. Going forward, same thing. Yeah. But where those horizontal marketplaces are really good, overall consumer experience in terms of delivery, purchase promise, warranty, terms, every such thing, right? And so that's where we're heading. And now what does it mean? How did marketplace businesses perform? So this is in German, but it's a very, very well-known institute. I just trying to highlight one of the things the BFH looked at. Okay, who grew the most in the last 2 years? They identified top 5 trends. Number 1, marketplaces grew almost 20%, and they're comparing to the prior year and such, right? And obviously much stronger than everybody else in online, right? And it was over 50% of the entire purchase volume. You're counting every single retailer in there. All the shoppers, over 50% purchase on marketplace. That is a huge step. This is like $1 trillion economy. This is absolutely a massive jump overall. And you know what? That's not going back. That is consumer behavior changing as the preferred choice, right? How did the businesses go? How did the stock market look at this? Lots of people had some time to look in the last 2 years, which ways the valuations of the companies are doing, get active in the market. Now, but look at those types of business models. You compare traditional etail. This is taken from some US examples, Best Buy, Kroger, Walmart, right? And compare this to publicly known because they publicize their data, right? Marketplaces, Farfetch, Etsy, eBay, Amazon, right? These have outgrown in terms of market cap any other competitor on the traditional e-tail side. And here's why. Because it's more a service and technology platform and you're not suffering from this big inventory risk. That's where the money is sunk. And it's much easier to scale, to build inventory and build assortment. And it's also simply where the consumers are heading, right? And so that's why the market just, it gave them much higher uptick in value. That's where we're heading. Look at, if you guys remember, let's look 15 years back. Originally, how did consumers approach this thing? They didn't think too hard about what they can do and what they get for it. We started with generic listings, Craigslist and such. There really wasn't much. It was a discovery support. I'm trying to find something. Here's a place I can go to. I can do some specific product-driven search or service search. That didn't last too long. Consumer wanted more. We moved to focused listings, focused directory services and such. And those were vertical platforms, right? That allowed for a specific target category, right? And you have this in lots of places: real estate, financial services, travel sites, clearly also e-commerce, right? But that also wasn't enough because the consumer didn't want a navigation, they just wanted the purchase. All right, so those marketplaces needed to develop further. And out of that came specialized marketplaces, right? They're moving much closer to the actual transaction. And once you're close to the transaction, you can deliver a lot more There's no bad surprises. There's a unified shopping experience. There's a trustful environment. You don't have to work around this, right? But what you have to do as a marketplace, you really have to be really, really good at providing insight in the category and helping with, with specific and more complex categories. And that's where specialized marketplaces come in. Look on the travel side, Airbnb, right? It's would be tough to rent your vacation rental on Amazon, right? It's just a different place. HomeTiger is one of them. Like we focus on home and garden products, yeah, more bigger products that have lots of contingencies. You measure stuff. You have design needs to fit and so on. You have to add a lot more information for a consumer to feel comfortable. And where it's heading now, it's fully managed marketplaces. This goes for the horizontal marketplaces and it goes for the vertical marketplaces. Managed means the seller takes a back seat. The marketplace is all front and center, right? The buyer, the consumer, doesn't necessarily get to see the seller so much because all the entire shopping experience is the marketplace, right? And a lot more, the marketplace is really abstracting away from this entire complexity. Yeah, you can use your points, your credit card, Amazon, or something, anything over any category, right? And the same with logistics. Think about that, a unified logistics experience. You guys know this, but this is simply the way that consumers like that to move. And hence, that's where e-commerce is moving. And what does it mean now? How do you compete as a seller if the marketplace is abstracting away, if you don't have the visibility, the customer doesn't even know you're there really, right? Well, you still have to compete. But here, you compete on the marketplace platform. And it's not about reviews as such. You actually have to do the utmost you can to leverage that ecosystem of various marketplaces. And you have to be as good as you can to present your products on the marketplace side. And this is specifically important for the non-commodity market, the non-essentials, right? And I'll give you examples. HomeTiger is a vertical marketplace for home and garden. We provide very specialized findability. Tons and tons of filters and deep search opportunity, because you really guide the customer, yeah, on very specific terms and items, yeah, very specific descriptional contents. It's really, we have on that platform, it's 95 different product attributes, yeah, from a wardrobe, very different from a carpet and such. So, but it's not us building the content. It's the merchant building the content. We're just asking for it because that's what customers need. And if you want to be visible on that marketplace, you have to have that. And then you have to do the utmost and also provide visual types of contents. Right? There's 5 million furniture products. There's 25,000 box spring beds. How are you going to stick out as the player? Well, you stick out if you do the very best to present your products, right? And it's not about how much I pay or anything. It's you really, visual, rich content is king, right? Product content, attribute content is king. You have to be able to leverage what the marketplace is providing, in this case, an interior designer community, and they're curating. You have to get listed by those guys to get visibility and recommendations. Yeah. So there's a lot of features and product concepts that the marketplace is providing that you as a seller have to use to get the visibility, right? And ultimately, it's about product stories, brand stories. And every marketplace is helping out, one more better than the other. But without that, you don't get the attention, and the marketplace won't promote you, right? So it's a give and take, yeah? And that's important. Category focus is king. Category content or specific content, rich content is king, yeah? And the players who don't get that, they just won't be successful next to their competitors. So how do you coexist as a seller or as a manufacturer or an OEM, right? Well, we just touched on this. Number one, right? That's the hard part. Number two, when I come to this, is a little bit easier now, right? Story and content to avoid being commoditized. Right? If you're just one out of 25,000 box spring beds vendors, all right, it's a lottery, right? So the seller side on the marketplace the operating system basically is providing those facilities, those product features, those page types, those rich media formats. You can upload videos. There's live stream formats, all that, right? And that is a great way to differentiate. Then invest in your brand story, right? Look at this. It sounds simple, but you want to know who is the manufacturer, who's the sender. This is like where Europe and the US are maybe a little bit behind. You look at Asia, this is front and center, specifically in the long tail. Farmer markets are doing live broadcasts and they're doing a walkthrough over their farms as a manufacturer. That is a brand story. You just want to buy from this guy because you believe it's authentic, it's original, it is value. I don't have to compete on price, right? And so the last one, that means competing on the basis of transactional content, right? That is providing everything the consumer needs to see or know at the time that he's about to make that decision to press the buy button or not, right? So you want to make sure that you have everything loaded on your product page that you can to make that happen. So that was step one, story and content. And step two, and that's important, that is a huge change. A marketplace can be commoditized, and the way is by distributing on many, many marketplaces. And that hasn't been the opportunity 3-4 years ago. Now, you see lots of brands and classic e-tailers become marketplaces. They add marketplace capabilities, right? They all pull in through different technologies, or they build it there in-house. They load lots of catalog. As a seller, you have the opportunity to be there, right? There are software tools. I think there's Channel Engine, Channel Advisor, you name it. There's 10s, 20s of software tools where it's very, very easy for you. If you're a strong brand, you can commoditize the marketplaces. You can be on 20 or 30 marketplaces, and you should be. And it's a game well to be played because one marketplace can get that price, the other can get that price, this guy can get that part of the assortment, those guys get the other part of the assortment, right? And so on, right? And that is something that most players really have to get used to leverage that ability, right? Or not bet everything on one horse, but also that's how you get the maximum consumer side. All right. Before I leave you into the break, that's the one, wake up. Let's remember, 3 things. Key takeaways. Marketplace overall, and I just want to point this out to you guys, but before it wasn't very obvious, but what the last 2 years have done to accelerate this trend. The marketplaces are the market. It's not a choice, right? They are the market. If it's extremely hard, D2C brands and so, to build your own distribution, it is extremely hard, right? Consumers don't want it. They just really don't care. There's less brand loyalty. They want a safe haven, a trusted choice, a trusted source for their purchases, with a reliable behavior, right? And so you have to play that game on the sell side, right? And so key takeaways: marketplaces are becoming the market, right? You as a seller, you focus on uniqueness and brand. The content is king, and there's so many formats and contents. You have to learn the ability to play that. Heck, there will be podcasts, there will be live audio streams, there will be everything coming up. You need to turn your e-productions team into almost a studio team. They have to be fully aware of this, right? Number 2, we just talked about is commoditize the marketplaces. Be everywhere. That's the thing. But be smart about how you're distributing that and on what offers and such, right? And number 3, leverage every single specific brand feature or product feature on each marketplace. And they're not all the same. They're actually quite different. But that gives you maximum exposure. That drives maximum visibility on each of those marketplaces, right? And ultimately conversion and revenue and repeat purchase and so on. Yeah. So those 3 little things, I'd love for you to have a thought about, and then welcome for other ideas and thoughts. You can probably find me after this. Thank you guys. Have a great remaining day. Thanks.